a filing cabinet, a pool drain, a vending machine. You interact with them daily, completely blind to their lethal potential. In this video, we break down 6 horrific deaths caused by mundane, everyday objects. This documentary footage analyzes real tragedies to teach you the invisible dangers of daily life. Do not underestimate your environment. Comfort is a dangerous illusion. September 2002. The atmosphere inside the Chicago accounting firm is heavy and still. It is exactly 8:15 p.m. on a Friday. The massive office floor is completely empty. The only sounds are the low hum of the HVAC system and the quiet electrical buzz of overhead fluorescent lights. The air carries the distinct, sterile scent of warm photocopier ozone mixed with dry manila folders. Mark is a 42-year-old senior auditor. He is operating at the absolute limit of his mental capacity. He just wants to find one specific historical ledger, lock his computer, and start his weekend. He walks down the narrow windowless corridor of the main records room. He navigates his space entirely on autopilot. He has performed this physical routine thousands of times. He stops in front of an industrial-grade lateral filing cabinet. This is a massive piece of office furniture. It is manufactured from cold-rolled steel and stands over 5 feet tall. Fully loaded with tightly packed paper, it weighs more than 500 pounds. Mark grabs the handle of the third drawer from the bottom and pulls. The heavy steel compartment glides outward with a smooth hiss. The document he needs is not immediately visible. Without closing the third drawer, Mark reaches up and violently pulls open the fourth, topmost drawer. This seemingly harmless action is a catastrophic breach of mechanical physics. An open drawer acts as a massive lever. By extending 2 fully loaded top drawers simultaneously, Mark drastically shifts the cabinet's center of gravity. The dense mass of the paper moves entirely forward, hanging past the front edge of the steel base. Normally, this fatal imbalance is impossible. Strict building codes require these tall storage units to be bolted firmly into the structural drywall. They are designed to be immovable, but a latent threat was left behind 3 weeks ago. A late-night maintenance crew unbolted the entire row of cabinets to install new commercial carpeting. They finished their shift and simply forgot to reinstall the heavy-duty wall anchors. Mark has no idea he is interacting with an untethered, dangerously unbalanced mechanism. He leans his upper body forward. He rests his hands lightly on the edge of the open third drawer. He just needs a little leverage to peer deeper into the top compartment. That slight downward pressure is the final physical trigger. Gravity takes total control of the steel box. The cabinet transitions from a stationary object into a lethal pendulum. Time brutally slows down. The heavy back edge of the steel base silently lifts a fraction of a millimeter. The static-resistant carpet offers absolutely no physical resistance. The fulcrum shifts perfectly to the front-bottom edge. The descent begins in terrifying silence. Gravity accelerates the massive steel box downward at an exponential rate. Mark hears a brief, sharp scrape as the unanchored back panel rubs against the painted drywall. He instinctively looks up. Human visual processing requires roughly a quarter of a second to identify a sudden threat. The plummeting cabinet consumes the remaining distance in less than half that time. There is absolutely no physical window for evasion. Mark cannot step backward or raise his arms to brace himself. The leading steel edge violently strikes his upper torso. It carries the kinetic energy of a moving vehicle. The staggering weight completely overwhelms his fragile, skeletal frame. The force brutally slams his body backward against the thin carpet. The sudden momentum causes the extended metal drawers to slam shut upon impact. This traps his chest firmly beneath the solid steel housing. The clinical outcome is brutally efficient and strictly mechanical. The sheer, localized weight immediately compromises his ribcage structure. This catastrophic pressure triggers profound compressive asphyxia. His lungs are physically incapable of drawing in oxygen against the unyielding external force. Simultaneously, severe blunt force trauma to the skull causes an instantaneous loss of consciousness. Total cardiac arrest rapidly follows as the compressed chest cavity physically halts all internal blood flow. The entire fatal sequence takes less than 2 seconds. A heavy thud briefly vibrates through the thick concrete subfloor. The sprawling office remains entirely deaf to the event. Airborne dust swirls in the bright overhead light, slowly settling back down. The immense cabinet now lies completely flat on its heavy front. It acts as an imposing beige monolith resting across the narrow aisle. A single financial ledger has slipped free from the metal wreckage. It rests perfectly intact just inches from the fatal crush zone. Mark will remain hidden under the steel box until the morning janitorial staff arrives. They will discover a chilling testament to the lethal potential hidden inside absolute routine. August 2007. David is a 38-year-old homeowner who is tired, annoyed, and deeply determined to finish a frustrating chore. He stands waist-deep in his backyard swimming pool under the oppressive heat of the late summer sun. The air is thick with heavy humidity and the sharp chemical scent of liquid chlorine. Breaking the quiet atmosphere is the relentless drone of a massive mechanical pump. A high-capacity filtration engine runs aggressively behind a nearby wooden fence. He takes a massive gulp of warm summer air and holds his breath. Gripping a stiff nylon scrubbing brush, he forcefully dives toward the deep end. His trajectory is smooth and perfectly practiced as he glides down into the 8-foot depth. He casually equalizes the mild water pressure building inside his ears. He is completely blind to the lethal physics waiting perfectly hidden at the lowest point. The fundamental safety of any modern swimming pool relies entirely on the structural integrity of its main drain grate. A heavy-duty filtration pump continuously pulls massive volumes of water out of the pool to clean it. This process creates a powerful, invisible force known as delta P, or differential pressure. When a mechanical system sucks water into an enclosed pipe, it creates an aggressive vacuum. A domed plastic grate normally covers the bottom drain hole. This cover safely distributes the intense suction force across dozens of small openings. It makes the powerful pull completely harmless to a passing swimmer. But a fatal variable was introduced by David himself just 24 hours earlier. The old plastic safety grate had badly cracked from years of ultraviolet sun damage. David unscrewed the broken plastic cover and blindly threw it away. He fully intended to buy a secure replacement from the hardware store later. Crucially, he left the main circulation pump actively running on its automatic timer. He carelessly left an 8-inch PVC pipe fully exposed. It was actively pulling hundreds of gallons of water per minute. David lazily kicks his bare legs, hovering just inches above the smooth fiberglass floor. He aggressively scrubs a small patch of stubborn, green algae. He unknowingly drifts slowly backward toward the lowest point of the deep end. The deadly sequence begins the exact moment his lower torso passes directly over the dark open pipe. He does not feel a gradual or gentle pull. Differential pressure is a strictly binary trap. It is either safely off or it is immediately active. The bare skin of his abdomen brushes directly against the raw PVC rim. His torso instantly acts as a perfect biological plug. The intense vacuum seal is formed completely and irreversibly. The massive atmospheric weight of the water pushes down from above him. This combines with the extreme mechanical suction of the 2-horsepower pump below. It instantly generates over 500 pounds of relentless downward pressure. It is the exact physical equivalent of having an engine block suddenly dropped onto his stomach. He drops his cleaning brush in pure shock. He aggressively plants both hands on the pool floor. He pushes upward with maximum explosive strength. It is a mathematically useless effort. Human muscle simply cannot defeat the sheer, calculating physics of a total vacuum. He is permanently anchored to the bottom of the structure. The clinical progression of the tragedy is silent, invisible, and terrifyingly rapid. His violent, panic struggling drastically accelerates his cellular oxygen consumption. Carbon dioxide rapidly builds up within his circulating bloodstream. This triggers an overwhelming, involuntary biological reflex to immediately inhale. Within 90 seconds, the breaking point of human endurance is reached. His airway spasms, involuntarily forcing itself open. He inhales a massive volume of highly chlorinated water directly into his lungs. The sudden fluid intake causes severe pulmonary interference. This immediate disruption permanently prevents any necessary oxygen gas exchange. Acute hypoxia rapidly starves his brain tissues of life-sustaining oxygen. This leads directly to profound mental disorientation and an imminent loss of consciousness. Total cardiac arrest inevitably follows within just a few minutes. The vulnerable heart muscle is completely deprived of vital oxygenated blood. Deep below the surface, the brutal mechanical physics remain entirely unbroken. Above the water, the chaotic splashing violently and suddenly stops. The bright blue surface slowly returns to a calm, glassy mirror. The powerful mechanical pump behind the wooden fence continues its loud, steady hum. It is blindly pulling against a perfectly sealed plastic pipe. A single blue nylon scrub brush quietly bobs up to the water's surface. It drifts lazily toward the side skimmer basket under the fading afternoon sun. It leaves behind a perfectly quiet, completely empty suburban backyard. August 2011. A brightly colored, brand new canvas hammock rests in the hands of a physically exhausted homeowner. It is a suffocatingly hot Saturday in a quiet Texas suburb, and the air smells harshly of freshly cut grass. Heat physically radiates upward from the intricate paving stones of the expansive backyard patio. He walks over to a pair of freestanding, decorative brick columns. These tall architectural features were originally built to hold heavy-hanging flower baskets. Michael quickly wraps the thick nylon suspension ropes around the top of each brick pillar. He ties tight, secure knots. He aggressively pulls the ropes to test their strength. They feel perfectly solid. He is absolutely confident in his setup. This simple routine action sets a completely invisible mechanical trap. The fatal error lies in a fundamental misunderstanding of basic structural engineering. A masonry column is incredibly resilient against vertical compression. It can easily support thousands of pounds of weight pushing straight down from above. However, unreinforced brickwork possesses practically zero sideways strength. It simply cannot resist a strong lateral pull. The hardened mortar holding the clay bricks together is extremely brittle. It is essentially just dried sand and cement. Unless a brick column is built around a solid internal steel pipe, a sideways force will destroy it. Michael is completely unaware that his decorative columns are entirely hollow. They are literally just stacked clay bricks resting on top of each other. He confidently steps back to admire his work. He walks to the kitchen and grabs a glass of iced tea. He walks back out to the patio. He approaches the hanging canvas. He grips the edges of the thick fabric with both hands. He turns around and drops his entire body weight directly into the center of the hammock. This is the exact moment of irreversible mechanical failure. The next fraction of a second stretches out as gravity takes over. A hammock is not just a simple suspended seat. The shallow angle of the tightened ropes acts as an aggressive force multiplier. Michael weighs roughly 200 pounds. As he settles into the middle, the ropes pull violently inward. They apply over 400 pounds of concentrated lateral leverage directly against the top tier of the left column. The tall structure acts exactly like a giant crowbar. The dry mortar joint at the very bottom of the pillar feels the absolute maximum stress. It cannot absorb this horizontal pull. A microscopic crack instantly races horizontally through the base cement. The loud, sharp sound of snapping mortar suddenly echoes across the quiet yard. Michael barely registers the sudden noise. He has absolutely no time to react. He cannot stand up. He cannot roll away. Human reflexes cannot outpace the sudden collapse of dense masonry. The entire 8-foot column snaps cleanly at the base. Gravity immediately pulls the massive structure inward. Over 600 pounds of solid clay bricks and hardened mortar drop directly toward his upper body. The heavy structural mass violently strikes his unprotected upper torso and head. The clinical outcome is strictly physical and immediately fatal. The catastrophic blunt force trauma completely overwhelms his skeletal structure. The localized impact instantly collapses his rib cage. This massive internal pressure triggers immediate compressive asphyxia. It physically destroys his lungs' vital ability to expand and draw in oxygen. Simultaneously, the direct impact of the dense masonry against his skull causes a fatal brain injury. This forces an instantaneous loss of consciousness. The massive mechanical shock to his entire biological system causes immediate cardiac arrest. All vital life functions permanently cease within mere seconds. The heavy thud of the collapsing bricks violently shakes the patio floor. A thick cloud of fine red dust aggressively explodes outward. It drifts slowly into the humid summer air. The fine dust slowly settles across the perfectly manicured green lawn. The bright canvas hammock is now completely buried under a heavy pile of shattered clay blocks. The glass of iced tea has spilled completely across the hot stones. The suburban yard returns to absolute terrifying silence. January 2006. The desolate corporate break room inside an Ohio logistics center is visually sterile and completely empty. It is exactly 2:15 a.m. on a freezing Tuesday morning. The room smells heavily of burnt, stale coffee and strong industrial floor wax. The only acoustic presence is the continuous, loud mechanical vibration of a large commercial vending machine. It sits perfectly flush against a painted cinder block wall. Greg is a 28-year-old night shift warehouse supervisor. He is heavily fatigued and operating on a severe sleep deficit. His biological clock is aggressively fighting the late hour. He desperately needs a fast burst of sugar to survive the final 4 hours of his shift. He stands eagerly in front of the tall snack machine. He feeds a crumpled dollar bill into the mechanical slot. He firmly presses the heavy plastic buttons. The internal metal coil slowly rotates. A heavy chocolate bar pushes forward, but it fails to drop. It stubbornly catches on the plastic lip. It hangs directly behind the thick plexiglass window. Greg lets out a loud sigh of deep frustration. He immediately resorts to a very familiar physical routine. He places his hands on the machine. He has forcefully shaken these machines dozens of times to dislodge stuck merchandise. It has always worked safely in the past. This assumption sets the stage for a catastrophic mechanical failure. A fully loaded commercial vending machine is an immensely heavy piece of equipment. It easily weighs up to 900 pounds. It is specifically engineered to have a very low center of gravity. The heavy refrigeration compressor, the steel coin vault, and the dense rows of bottled beverages are always placed at the bottom. This standard configuration makes the tall machine incredibly stable. It is mathematically designed to resist tipping over. However, a hidden physical variable has completely compromised this safety design. It is the very end of the month. The external vendor has not serviced this specific machine in over 2 weeks. The heavy bottom beverage rows are completely empty. The coin vault has already been emptied. The only remaining dense inventory is heavily concentrated in the top 2 snack rows. This completely shifts the appliance's center of mass dangerously high. The machine is now incredibly top-heavy. Greg places both hands flat against the cold, thick glass. He grips the upper edge of the metal doorframe. He forcefully rocks the tall machine backward a few inches. Then he abruptly pulls it forward. Time violently slows down as basic physics take complete control. The massive steel box tilts aggressively toward his chest. Normally, the heavy base would easily act as a reliable anchor. It would immediately pull the machine safely backward against the solid cinder block wall. But the empty base provides absolutely no physical counterweight. The elevated center of mass violently crosses the absolute point of no return. The heavy machine tips past the critical angle of balance. Gravity instantly seizes the massive steel structure. The tall metal box violently accelerates downward. Greg suddenly realizes his fatal error. But human reaction time is completely useless here. The falling machine is simply too wide for him to quickly step around. It is entirely too heavy for him to manually catch or push back. He instinctively throws his bare hands up in a futile attempt to brace himself. The sheer kinetic energy of the falling mass instantly buckles his wrists. The thick, reinforced steel door frame violently strikes his upper chest. The staggering momentum brutally slams his back against the hard commercial linoleum floor. The clinical outcome is strictly mechanical and brutally fast. The massive, unyielding weight causes immediate and catastrophic structural failure of his ribcage. The heavy metal forcibly compresses his chest cavity against the rigid floor. This intense trauma triggers profound compressive asphyxia. His severely compressed lungs are physically denied any ability to expand. The immense localized pressure immediately halts the internal circulation of oxygenated blood. This rapid biological starvation causes an instantaneous loss of consciousness. Total cardiac arrest inevitably follows in less than 3 minutes. The severe external pressure entirely suppresses all vital organ function. The violent, deafening crash aggressively echoes down the empty warehouse hallways. The massive machine now lies perfectly flat on its glass front. The stubborn chocolate bar has finally dropped loose. It rests quietly against the inside of the intact glass. The cooling compressor in the back of the heavy machine suddenly clicks on. It hums loudly and violently vibrates across the completely silent room. Greg will not be discovered until the morning shift arrives at dawn. July 2009. Robert is a highly experienced 55-year-old private pilot eagerly preparing for a quick coastal flight. He sits inside a cramped, vibrating cockpit parked on the flat, sun-baked asphalt of a rural Florida airfield. He has just manually started the engine to warm up the internal oil. He pushes the throttle lever forward. The engine runs up to a steady 2,500 revolutions per minute. He suddenly looks out the small side window. He instantly realizes a deeply frustrating mistake. He completely forgot to remove the heavy rubber wheel chocks from the front landing gear. The plane physically cannot move forward onto the runway. Strict aviation rules clearly state a pilot must shut down the engine before exiting. But human arrogance often overrides basic safety protocols. Robert is impatient and wants to save a few minutes. He decides to leave the loud engine actively running. He unbuckles his harness and steps down onto the hot asphalt. This careless decision sets up a terrifying optical illusion. At incredibly high mechanical speeds, an aircraft propeller becomes visually deceptive. A solid piece of heavy forged aluminum spins so fast that the human eye cannot track it. The human brain completely fails to process the sheer speed of rotation. The spinning metal blades entirely blend into the bright blue sky. The propeller literally becomes a perfectly invisible, deadly wall of moving metal. Robert casually walks toward the nose of the plane. The engine noise is physically overwhelming, vibrating through his chest. He has walked this exact path around a spinning blade dozens of times. He believes he knows exactly where the safe visual boundary ends. He intends to quickly reach down, grab the heavy blocks, and step back. Time brutally slows down to a crawl as a random variable suddenly interferes. A loud, sharp metallic bang suddenly echoes from a nearby open hangar. An oblivious mechanic just accidentally dropped a heavy steel wrench onto a concrete floor. The sharp noise easily pierces right through the loud engine drone. It violently breaks Robert's intense internal concentration. He instinctively turns his head sharply to the right to locate the sudden sound. He absolutely does not stop walking forward. This tiny mental distraction completely destroys his delicate spatial awareness. He fatally miscalculates his physical boundary. He takes just one single step slightly to the left of his normal route. His right shoulder entirely breaches the completely invisible plane of rotation. The physical interaction is instantaneous and mathematically absolute. The thick metal propeller tips are traveling at roughly 500 miles per hour. The solid aluminum catastrophically impacts his upper torso and cranium with unimaginable kinetic force. The clinical outcome is strictly mechanical and brutally irreversible. The massive transfer of kinetic energy completely overwhelms his entire skeletal structure. The catastrophic blunt force trauma instantly compromises the structural integrity of his skull. This immediate, severe structural compromise causes catastrophic neurological trauma to the upper spinal column. The massive shock to the biological system forces an immediate loss of consciousness. All vital central nervous system activity completely ceases in a fraction of a millisecond, resulting in instantaneous brain death. Total cardiac arrest inevitably follows instantly as all electrical signals to the heart are violently disconnected. Robert feels absolutely zero physical pain. His human brain simply does not have the biological time to process the physical impact. The heavy mechanical strike causes the airplane engine to violently stutter for a brief second. A thick puff of black exhaust smoke aggressively shoots out of the side pipe. But the highly reliable aviation motor quickly recovers its steady rhythm. The loud engine continues to aggressively roar endlessly over the entirely empty runway. The spinning propeller immediately returns to its terrifying, perfectly invisible state. The bright yellow rubber wheel chocks remain perfectly wedged deeply under the front tire. They sit quietly on the hot tarmac, waiting for a pilot who will never return. November 2004. A massive commercial Smith machine stands in the center of a crowded downtown Seattle gym. It is exactly 8:30 p.m. on a cold, rainy Tuesday, and the room loudly echoes with the clanking of heavy iron plates. Marcus is a 28-year-old, highly competitive bodybuilder. He is currently operating in a state of deep mental focus. He is desperately trying to push his physical boundaries to prepare for an upcoming competition. He stands aggressively under a heavy commercial Smith machine. He has meticulously loaded exactly 160 kilograms of solid iron plates onto the thick steel barbell. The fundamental safety of this specific mechanical apparatus is heavily marketed to professional athletes. A Smith machine is explicitly designed to offer absolute user safety without a human spotter. The heavy barbell smoothly glides up and down on perfectly vertical steel guide rods. To instantly secure the massive weight at any given moment, the user simply twists their wrist backward. This easy motion rotates a pair of thick steel hooks directly onto heavy metal pegs welded along the frame. It should mathematically guarantee total physical security. But a completely invisible mechanical flaw has been aggressively growing deep inside the equipment for over 5 years. The hidden danger is severe metal fatigue. Thousands of different gym members have carelessly dropped the heavy bar onto the steel pegs day after day. These continuous, aggressive impacts have slowly created thousands of microscopic fractures deep inside the molecular structure of the left steel hook. On the outside, the shiny chrome hook looks perfectly solid and completely intact. On the inside, the metal is entirely compromised and incredibly brittle. It is exactly one impact away from total mechanical failure. Marcus takes a massive, deep breath of the humid gym air. He confidently unhooks the heavy barbell. He expertly performs 5 grueling, perfectly controlled deep squats. His massive leg muscles are heavily burning and actively shaking from the extreme physical effort. He powerfully pushes back up to a fully standing position to finish the final repetition. He feels a deep sense of total physical relief. He confidently rolls his sweaty wrist backward to physically lock the heavy bar safely into place. He clearly hears the very familiar metallic click of the steel hook firmly engaging the solid metal peg. Believing he is perfectly safe, he instantly relaxes his exhausted core muscles. He completely drops his physical guard. Time brutally slows down exactly as he begins to step out from underneath the heavy iron bar. The deeply compromised left steel hook simply cannot handle the massive static load any longer. The solid metal instantly snaps and completely shears off the rotating bar. The sharp sound of breaking steel is entirely lost in the loud gym music. The 160 kilograms of dead iron immediately enters a terrifying state of unhindered freefall. The vertical steel guide rods ensure the massive weight drops perfectly straight down with extreme velocity. Marcus has absolutely no warning and absolutely zero time to visually react. The heavy steel bar violently strikes the lower back of his unprotected neck. It carries the staggering kinetic energy of a massive falling object. The clinical outcome is strictly mechanical, brutally fast, and totally irreversible. The extreme, localized, compressive force completely overwhelms his upper spinal column. The cervical vertebrae instantly suffer absolute structural failure. This catastrophic trauma immediately compromises the vital spinal cord. This specific damage causes irreversible trauma to the central nervous system. Total physical paralysis instantly takes hold. The massive weight continues its violent downward trajectory. It forcefully pins his helpless, limp body firmly against the hard rubber floor. The staggering pressure immediately triggers profound compressive asphyxia. His paralyzed lungs are physically completely incapable of expanding to draw in necessary oxygen. Severe neurogenic shock instantly overwhelms the entire biological system. Total cardiac arrest inevitably follows within mere minutes. The massive internal trauma entirely shuts down all remaining vital organ functions. The heavy barbell finally comes to a loud, violent rest on the lowest safety springs. The gym music continues to aggressively pump through the overhead speakers. The small, jagged piece of the broken steel hook slowly rolls across the black rubber floor. It casually comes to a complete stop near a discarded water bottle. It is surrounded by athletes who are entirely oblivious to the sudden tragedy. We built a world so comfortable that we completely lost our survival instincts. We trust unanchored steel and cheap plastic with our lives. Tell me in the comments, has modern safety made humanity completely blind to basic physics? Or are these just the unavoidable taxes of living in a complex world? Defend your stance below. Hit subscribe and leave a like to keep your reality in check.